We need to keep him in our thoughts and our prayers. Anyone else? Heard the 8 o'clock bell, so I was close. Anybody else? Brother Bobby, would you say a prayer for us, please?
Father God, thank you for this time to come together, study thy word, and ask it to be a blessing on all that's here. Pray for the leader of the hour, may he have ready recollection of the lesson that he has planned. Pray for those who are sick and injured, Lord, that your healing hand will be upon them. Bring them a measure of peace to just thy will. Thank you, Lord, in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
This lesson sort of starts out as a recap of a previous lesson. It starts with Proverbs 22 in verse 6 that says, "Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it." And at that time, we had gone into quite a bit of discussion about the two halves of that verse. Where most controversy is people want to dwell on the second half, that the child won't depart, but in reality, what needs to take place is the first part, the teaching and the training. And when we get down to the next item on it, it says Solomon reveals a method of that training. And when we get down to item 3, it says common sense and observation tell all of us that untrained children are like wild animals, without respect for other people, destructive of much of what they touch. I'm going to stop teaching right now and I'm going to start meddling. And I want you to step back and take a look at this from the outside and look in. Because if you look from it within, you're too close to the situation. My observance over the years, and I know I'm an old mossback, I'm old, but my observance over the years is that children today, and let me start out by putting this in the proper context. I'm not talking about every child. I'm talking about in general. What I see over the years is that children today, even those within the church, are not taught respect. I said I was going to start meddling, and I want you to look at it from the outside looking in. Part of the problem with that is that even those that in the church that make an effort at teaching a child to respect, there is no reinforcement in the outside world. When I was a youngster growing up, my grandparents lived with us. I've told y'all this story many times. But if I did not say yes, ma'am, or yes, sir, or no, ma'am, or no, sir, there was punishment along with that. When I was in school, in the first, second, third, on up, teachers expected you to be respectful to them. And if you were not respectful to them, things happened. Today, and I've been in many schools since then, and like I say, from outside looking in, how many kids bolt through that back door and run over an older person trying to get out of the building or into the building? How many kids hold a door for an older person? In school, those of you that have kids in school, what do the teachers do for the child in regard to respecting an older person? I can tell you, when you walk down the hallways of schools today, you hear the word of God used in a profane way all the time, but you don't hear it used in a profound way. I was reading an article just a couple of days ago where a teacher got in trouble because he was controlling a young lady that was out of control until the cops walked over and took over. He did not hit her, but he laid a hand on her to control her until the cops came over, but yet he was found in the wrong. What is that teaching our young folks today? Now that I have stirred the pot considerably, it's your turn to talk. Are our children today being taught respect? Are our children today using that respect and showing the proper respect? Yes, sir.
What example do we as adults set when we don't respect law enforcement, we don't respect the government, we don't respect our elders? What example are we showing to our children? And then we tell them, you need to say yes or no, so we don't do it.
Well, we're going to get into that. Because it all starts with the example they see. And like I say, we'll get into that in just a minute. But outside looking in, if you remove your emotion from it and just look at facts, are children today being taught respect? Yes, sir.
I can't speak for society as a whole, but I know mine are, and I can say the same thing for everyone else here, because I see it. We may not hear that said as often as we should, for the same reason we don't hear a lot of positive things on media or platforms where you happen to interact with society. Yeah, I'm not saying that there are a lot of kids, a lot of parents, a lot of whatever, that could do better. But the only things we can affect are the people that we deal with on a daily basis. As long as we're doing what we should there, and the best that we can there, we're making a positive impact.
Would you agree with me then that it is twice as hard for the people, for Christians today, to teach their children respect because they don't have the external reinforcement that they had when I was growing up?
I think that's probably fair to say.
I don't know if you should use twice as hard, more, a better term for that is twice as important.
I'm sorry?
It's twice as important for you to do that.
It's twice as important for you. You got to stay on it. Yes, Brother Bert.
I think this started falling apart when the government took spankings out of schools. And I know some parents today, when they spank their child, it would be a pat like that. And that don't work. I'm in a total agreement with you. It happened in the mid-1960s when they started taking prayer out of school, and when they started saying that they had to get the parent involved for any punishment that went on, and no capital punishment. It all started going south at that point, and that was in the mid-1960s. And we are on the culminating end of that right now. And I know there's people in here that have been in the schools and teachers and all, and they've seen that transition over the past 60 years. Yes, ma'am.
And I agree, there has been a transition. However, kids have not changed. How we parent has changed a lot too. Kids live up to the expectations that are set for them. In my classroom, the first week of school, we talked about, our rules, our things, and I would tell my kids, I'm not your parent. I don't do the 1, 2, 3 count when I tell you to do something. And if I tell you no, that doesn't mean you can ask me 20 more times, and I'm going to finally give in and say yes. So it took a while, but they knew when I said no, that meant no, that there was a structure about our classroom that was consistent. And kids need consistency, because if they are told no one time and they whine and get their way the next, you know, and then you give in, then they know that they're gonna get it the next time and the next time. Or if they get in trouble for this one time and don't the next time, they have no clue what's going on.
And see, that goes right back to what Brother Day said about it. It starts with the parent, what we teach them and how we train them. Yeah.
Look at society in general. Over the past 20, 25 years, you've got Dr. Spock, who teaches you not to spank your child, but he's you know, be a friend, don't be a parent. You've got sports where everybody gets a participation trophy. It doesn't matter if you come in first or last. You don't get a conduct grade in school anymore. In a lot of places, you don't get a grade at all. What kind of expectations, like she said, are we setting for our children?
Now, and we've got to sort of divide this up now, because in the South, in Alabama, things are a little bit different than other school systems in the United States. But starting back also in the 1970s, I think it was, that they started promoting children based on social promotion versus grade promotion. They wanted to keep them with their peer. Why? Brother, you got your hand up? Okay.
Now, you were speaking of government. I think the government has created a situation of pitting kids against parents. With call 911 if you think you're being abused. I mean, what is abuse? Most kids don't even know what that is. Spanking, nowadays, is considered abuse. And the government put that out as such. It's really sad that people, even outside of Christ, who want their children to do well and chastise them, because wherever you acted up, my mother took care of you right there. Wasn't waiting till you get home, anything, right there. But if you do that now, you may go to jail.
Delayed punishment is confused punishment. It must be on the spot when they know what it's all about. But I agree with you that there is a mass confusion right now that's been brought on. Again, when my kids were in school, the first day that we met the teachers at school, I let the teacher know, in this classroom, you are in charge. If you have to discipline my child, you discipline them, and you let me know, and I'll take care of the rest of it when they get home. For the vast majority, it don't work that way. You can't punish a child without the parent getting involved, and then the parent generally takes the child's side against the school administration before anything is done. So it is very, very difficult today for a Christian to raise and nurture their child the way they are supposed to, because of lack of reinforcement from outside, or because of the conflicts that take place. And you're pointing at a hand that was going up. Just open your ears though when you're out and watch the number of young folks today. If they're asked a question, their response is, yeah, no,
Let's pull that down into the classroom here at the church, not just here, but everywhere. When you're trying to teach young people, and you've got students that obviously aren't taught respect and how to behave at home, and you're trying to corral them all and teach them God's word, it's very difficult.
I've always said that teaching young kids at church is the most difficult task of all. It's not difficult to teach the adult class. The difficult part of the adult class is most of you know more than I do in trying to keep things lined up. But when you're trying to teach the young folks, there are those that want to be there, and there are those that don't want to be there. There are those that you have to encourage very little, and there are those that you have to encourage a lot. There are those that are totally disruptive. So trying to meet that happy median in the younger folks' classes is a very difficult task. Do you have your hand going up?
I did. First, that comment though is true across all age gaps.
Oh, yeah.
You know, for teaching though, it's always hard to find that medium line where it's accessible to everybody. And another one of those things that's always true, and it goes back to what we were talking about this morning, is that you can't teach what you don't know. And I think that is true here, as it said earlier, but it bears saying again. We can't teach our children what we don't practice. You know, they see it as a fraud anyway. They're the most honest individuals on the planet. And they'll call you out on it in a minute. And I think they ought to. But how can we teach them what we don't do? So a lot of it falls on us too. I mean, all of it does. But we've got to practice what we want them to live.
See, that leads right into what we was talking about with Brother Day earlier, because the next section there is talking about the method of training, and he's comparing the method of training a child to a growing vine. And the first item he says is, it is directed in the right direction. And I don't like that phrase, because I want to go along with what Brother Day said. It's not how we direct them, it's how we lead them. You can direct somebody to do something without doing it yourself. Or you can show them the way, you can direct them in the right way by showing them and leading them. Many jobs that I've had over the past when I was in leadership roles, I would never ask someone to do something or tell someone to do something that I wasn't willing to do myself. Sometimes I had to get in and do it, but most of the time it was their job to do, but if necessary, I would get in and do it. And here, if you're directing somebody in the right path, the most vital part of instruction for a young person is what? Who will a child follow? The person that gives them directions, or the person they want to emulate, or the person they want to be like? You can tell them all day long that this is the right way to do things, but if they like a sports figure, a TV celebrity, or something, if they are more in tune to that celebrity than they are you, who are they going to follow? You have to set the right example and get them going in the right direction, and try to get them to want to emulate you versus whatever personality they're after.
We've talked about it before, Brother Larry, but it's shocking to
single mother, the statistics are not as good, and that's definitely not that single mother's fault. But it's just human nature that that father is the one that is looked to as that example, the leader. And so often when that's missing, it makes it a very big struggle in the family. But, you know, it's interesting, we talk about all of society and everything that's changed and how respect has come out of society, but Ecclesiastes tells us, and I'm a broken record, I say this every week, you know, nothing new under the sun. We see in the 4th chapter of the Bible, we've already got siblings that, you know, are to the point of one murders the other. So there are example upon example in the Bible of parents who got it right and parents who got it wrong. And unfortunately, some parents who got it right and their kids still did the wrong thing. Or vice versa.
Yep.
Parents that did the wrong thing and their kids overcame it. And so I think no matter what society is doing around us, that should never be something that we rely on to enforce what we're teaching our kids.
See, it's all going to culminate back here in that we're not going to get to today, but on page 87 of the handout, it's talking about how all of this works. And item number 2 says, to be the best parent. You have to be the best parent you can be to show the way and lead the way, to teach and to train. Because item 1 under the one that we was just reading there, it says that the child does not know the way to go which is most productive. And that is if they're left on their own devices, if they're not being led and taught the proper way. And most of that training that goes at an early age, whether it's a good training or the bad training, is for a lifetime. Yes, sir.
Larry, I came across a cross reference that has to do with what you're talking about now as far as the agriculture. It deals with David and Adonijah. In 1 Kings 1 verse 6 it says, and his father, that is David, had not displeased him at any time in saying, why hast thou done this? In a sense, he's saying David spoiled this kid rotten. And it came back to really affect David as far as the kingship goes. And so when we think about the training, we can point fingers a lot of places, but it all really comes down to parents and kids alike. Do we have the right respect to God? If that's first and foremost in every aspect of life, whether it's respect or worship, other things, then it's going to have huge dividends.
It is. I think it would be mighty interesting, and I'm not suggesting we do it, but I think it'd be mighty interesting to go back and look at families in the Bible and how the parent treated the child, because we've got example after example. For instance, Abraham. How was Abraham a father to Ishmael? What caused him to go wrong? He kept turning it over to his wife Sarah. That's your handmaid. We look at others that were treated so differently. But as we continue here, the next item says, and it is not strong enough to support itself unless its tendrils are directed to something which it can grasp. Again, comparing child raising to the vine is not going to be able to last unless it can grasp onto something. You've all seen the climbing vines. And out by something it can grasp, I put down the word anchor. Something that it can anchor to. And that took me then to Hebrews chapter 6 and verse 19. Hebrews 6 and verse 19. Which hope we have as an anchor of the soul, both sure and steadfast, and which entereth into that within the veil. That then made me think of a song. And when I asked Andrea if she had remembered the song, she said, oh yeah, we did that in ladies' class.
will your anchor hold? So if we start out by saying that a good parent is leading and instructing is the best way to go, as a parent, where is your anchor? Anchored on.
Brother Larry, what do you always see when you see a vineyard? It's around here, we don't see many vineyards, but we may see muscadine rows and things like that. You always see that, those posts and those wires, you know, so that there is an anchor, there's something to grab onto there. You know, I can't imagine you would put all the effort into building the post and stringing the wire and then go plant your muscadine somewhere else. You're gonna put them right there close to where the anchor is. And, you know, we can only raise our children as good as we are being children of God.
And if we expect our children to look to us for guidance, we are their anchor, or should be their anchor. And then it says, thus it is kept off the ground where it would be trampled, or in other words, it's supported. So another thing that you see going on, and a lot of times children don't have as much positive reinforcement as they need. I'm not looking at any particular situation here. I'm just, over the years, I've seen things like this take place, that a child does good, and that's expected of them. But then the first time they do something bad, they're jumped on. Well, if you're not mixing it properly and not giving them the positive reinforcement for the good they've done, and you're only jumping on them when they've misbehaved, what signal is that sending? I can never be good enough. No matter what I do. Yes, sir.
Larry, the dreaded kudzu is a good example of these tendrils. As it runs across the ground, these tendrils turn into roots that add that anchor, but even more so. Then it also, as it starts growing up, the tendrils allow it to get higher and higher. So we see both aspects of it. We need roots deep. We also need to be reaching up.
If you're looking at negative things in nature, look at the cottonwood tree. Everywhere a root of a cottonwood tree bumps against the surface of the ground, there can be another shoot if some things go wrong. So, you're right. You're right. Yes, ma'am.
Through mom and daddy with their foster children, a lot of times the foster children come in and they're neglected. I mean, bad things are happening to them, and the only way they can get attention is to do bad things, and any attention to that child is attention.
Right.
So it's always good to give them positive attention, and always good to give them attention when they have done something wrong. So it's kind of not positive attention that they've done something wrong, but to teach them you're going to get attention this way, but you're also going to get good attention when you do good things. A lot of kids now get bad. I mean, they go with bad intention just to get some attention.
That's one thing I've always admired about your mom and dad, how they've managed to, over the years, take in 30 plus broken children and try to give them a life. Still take them in.
Brother Larry, back to what you were talking about, the issue of not giving positive reinforcement, too much negative. What causes that tendency in us as parents? I find myself, I guess, falling into that with Anderson if I'm not careful. Because you expect him to do what he's supposed to do, right? But you know, if you're not careful, then he's getting in trouble for things he doesn't do right or neglects to do. But it can be very difficult to praise those things that are done correctly. Why do we have that tendency?
I can only speak for myself on that. When I was growing up, I got all the positive reinforcement in the world. Negative if I did wrong, but it was well balanced. Went hunting and made a good shot. I was told I made a good shot. It wasn't just expected. But then when I got into the military, and from the military into the world, everything in the world seemed to be on the, if you did a good job, well, that's just what you're expected to do. So the only time the boss come around was on the negative. So the outside was influencing me along those lines. So I think that's what might happen a lot of times. Also, I hate to do it to you, but how'd your dad treat you when you was growing up? Did you get positive reinforcement from him, or did you learn from him only to do negative?
No, I don't think that came from my father.
Thank you. I'm glad you said that. But am I hitting along the right wavelength saying about, I mean, within the church here,
Good job, son.
everything that, how many, one second. In the church here, when somebody gets up, don't shoot me on this one or don't throw bricks, but when people get up here and stumble and bumble and don't do things, I mean, I know I can't lead a song. I know that. But I'm always given encouragement when I finish because I tried. I like it and I try. Our family, the church, we do that even if somebody is messing up. We try to encourage them the right way. I can't say that happened years ago here. We had one fella that would publicly chastise people for starting a song on the wrong note or having the wrong tempo or doing things. That's not the way to do things. Brother Clunch.
We know there has to be a balance between positive and negative, but when you look at the Ten Commandments that are proactively written in Exodus 20, how many thou shalt nots, negatives, are there before there are positives?
Right.
So, it's not necessarily wrong to be pointing out, because that's one way that we train. We correct that which is going wrong.
The negatives have to be addressed. There's verse after verse that says, don't withhold the rod. Not so sure a lot of times that's not in a figurative sense versus a literal sense, but every child is different. My two children, the girl, you could look at her cross-eyed and she'd break down in tears and know that she had to make a correction. My son, who can hear me on the other side of the glass back there, knows that I could beat him till he was black and blue and he'd still stand up and throw rocks at the fence post. So. Right, son? So, every child is different. Some require a heavy hand and some require a light hand. So, but wrong needs to be addressed. Wrong needs to be corrected. Yes, ma'am.
And it's a biblical principle, the whole parable of the unprofitable servant, that when they had done what they were supposed to do, they still, were supposed to say, well, I'm an unprofitable servant. I think it's just that for an adult and for a kid gaining that position, learning, we wouldn't expect them to necessarily have that mindset. I know I tend to do my positive reinforcement in private for fear of, boasting or things like that, or come across that way, but sometimes I think we do the negative reinforcement because we want everybody to know that as bad as whatever just happened, they're getting in trouble. We're as public with the reprimand as we were with whatever happened, and maybe we need to apply that with the positive reinforcement too. Not in a, hey, everybody listen up, but just so that it's immediate, as we were talking about punishment.
Well, one of the management classes that I had in the Air Force that I learned a lot from said when you can do it, always criticize in private, always praise in public. When you can. Now, we've already discussed there's times when children misbehave in the grocery store, that you need to, because if you wait till they get home, they're gonna forget what it was all about. So, but if they're old enough to realize what's going on, if you can wait till you're in private to have the negative conversations, and then anything that you can take the opportunity to praise in public, I think that works better also. Yes, sir.
I want to circle back around to a couple of comments and get into it because, well, I'm in the middle of trying to do this myself. I've been in the spot Jeremy was talking about where you find yourself, it seems like every word I'm saying is, don't do this, stop that, behave, pay attention. And that's important for input's sake. I think I find myself doing that not only because they need it, but because I as a parent am embarrassed at the way they are behaving and the way it reflects on me. And I want to be the one to fix the problem with my peer group or those above me and be seen, yeah, you handle that problem, and it's hard to realize, like you were saying, with children, sometimes that doesn't help the problem. Depending on what's going on in the temperament of the child, that actually makes it worse.
I'm glad you said that, because I was gonna ask you, but when you made that comment that you was always on them because of your shame, was you trying to correct them or soothe your own ego?
Hopefully, both, to be honest.
But see, that's one of the things that you should never, if you have to give corporal punishment, you should never do it in anger. You need to be cool. You need to have basically all the emotion out of it at that time, and be working on the event that led up to it, the offense, not how you feel about the offense, but the actual what you did, what's the right punishment. I didn't understand for years. Well, actually, I was probably an adult when I understood it. But every time my mom whooped me, she would, and it was a whooping, not a spanking, a whooping. She would always say, "This is going to hurt me more than it hurts you." How can that be? Because I'm the one getting that. But it hurt her that she had to inflict pain on me to try to get my attention.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Sure.
And I'm gonna break a rule, I'm gonna ask a question I don't know an answer to. Given that scenario then, as I go throughout my day, I try and pay attention not only to my children and the way I parent them, but being careful how I look at other parents parenting their own children. Because it's so easy to look at somebody and go, well, they're not handling that right. And while we can say that on some levels, we need to be careful and not just immediately jump off and go, it's wrong, because we don't know everything that's gone on before that or will go on after. Does that make sense? And is that appropriate?
Yeah, 'cause most of the time we get a snapshot of a moving picture. And the snapshot only tells us this instant. Doesn't tell us what led up to it or what took place after it. So it makes sense.
Well, but it's very easy in any aspect of our life, but especially I think as parents, to sometimes feel like you don't have things under control. You can look right around the beam and see the speck in the other person's eye. It's very easy to parent other people's kids because, they're not yours. You don't have to deal with the ramifications of it. Well, it's obviously this is the answer, whereas with your kids, you're like, well, that's not actually the answer.
And also, if you really think about it, the most exercise any human being gets is jumping to conclusion.
We learned early that when you're a married couple and you don't have any children, never make the statement, my children will never do anything. Don't finish that sentence, because we did that. We speculate what we do to them in the back seat, they were being bad, and it just, nah. The other thing is, in my professional career, I've had a chance to teach people, and I always try to be encouraging it, you can always find something good. It may take a little digging, but I had a guy that I was teaching how to script, and the guy had no logic, he couldn't put two sentences together to make anything work right. And I was coming up with something, I was trying to figure out what can I, that's not right either, let's try it again. I said, your logic's not real great. They said, but you are the best typist I have ever seen. And that kind of lightened the mood, and I'll try a little harder.
There's an old saying that says, make your words soft because someday you may have to eat them. One of my uncles was that way. He saw my dad, he dealt with the grandkids. I'll never. And then when he had grandkids, man, he ate a lot of those words. Yes, ma'am.
What you were saying a while ago about your mom saying this hurt you more than it hurt me. I never heard my mother say that. Never. My daddy only had to whip me one time, but he never said it. But it always hurt me worse. And I had a whipping, I know a whipping every day, and when I didn't get one, I asked my mom why. Why? What have I not done today to deserve this?
They may not have ever said it, but they thought it.
I needed it.
Positive reinforcement, right? That positive reinforcement.
Well, knowing your parents, as Brother David said here, knowing your parents, I know that even if they didn't verbally utter the words,
She didn't make it out loud. But I think as mean as I was for her, I probably deserved it. And I deserved every bit of what I got.
well, on the other hand, if you want to give them the benefit of the doubt, look how many times you didn't get one when you needed one.
And that's the days I asked.
Anybody? Yes, sir.
In Revelation, when he's talking about the 7 churches and Jesus is sending letters to them or talking to them, first he encourages them and tells them everything good they did just to soften it up and make them realize more that they are worth something. And then he cuts to the chase and tells them what's wrong and what their problems are. And I think that's pretty useful.
Yep. This one said, "There's always something good you can find if you dig deep enough." So you got to try to balance it out. Time is almost up. If y'all would like, we'll just start here next week. We have an extra week on this one, and we can pick up here. The next section just talks about how using the book of Proverbs is so beneficial to addressing all the issues. And that goes through about, let's just pick up about verse 80, or page 84 on this. And the bell should ring in just 5 or 10 seconds. So anything else while we're just sitting and talking about things?
My wife and I had 3 foster children when we were younger, and 2 of them, boys. We had one brother and sister. The sister did all right, but her younger brother, we couldn't do anything. He wouldn't come home from school. He'd lay out of school sometimes.
Yes, sir.
And then an older boy that we had, he would go out and not come home for a day or so to our house. And I would get out and drive around where I thought he was, couldn't find him. One time I talked and talked and talked to him. One time when he took off, we turned our records in, it was foster children. When he come home, when he come back to our house, we told him, we turned our records in, we were no longer foster parents. And the preacher where we went to church got on to us, said you shouldn't do that. So the preacher took him in for a week. And after that, he said, I know what you mean now.
Isn't it strange? Preachers always know best. Thank you. Yes.